found out were having encounters. That's what got me interested in reading books on the subject. Groups, seen UFOs myself. I know for sure that they're real, and yeah, it's a subject that's, I think, very important to people who deserve to know the truth. Their groups, both locally and nationally. But I work mostly independently now. It gives me more freedom. So, yeah, I support MUFON, but I'm an independent investigator.
And yeah, I can see why that would be beneficial to you. Let me ask you something. As far as the way that you go about investigating, let me see. My thoughts are split here. Let me stay on MUFON for a second. How do they? So with MUFON, and you're in the LA area, correct?
I used to be. I moved recently to northern Georgia.
Northern Georgia, okay. So, but when you were a MUFON investigator, were you in Los Angeles?
I was, yes.
Was, okay. So tell me about the number of sightings in the Los Angeles area, or even California, overall, as compared to other states, in terms of like frequency of sightings.
Yeah, this is very hard to estimate accurately. I can't say that California in general is the leading state in terms of the number of reports. Of course, it's got the highest population as well. And MUFON receives anywhere from 5 or 10 reports per day to 20 or more. And I think the problem is most people do not report. MUFON would hand over cases to me and I would investigate them. But as I started getting cases from outside of MUFON, I would always ask them, have you reported your sighting, your encounter to MUFON? And usually the answer was, what's MUFON? They don't call the police, they don't call the Air Force. I'll be generous and say 1 in 10 people, it's closer to really 1 in 100, report their sighting in any official capacity. So any numbers as to how common this is are vastly underestimated. This, I would say it's pretty much ongoing. Someone's somewhere always having a sighting. Certainly, historically, I think that's true.
There's a lot of reports. I do believe that there are a ton that are not being reported for one reason or another. Have you seen any credible video reports? And this is what I'm wondering, Preston. Have you ever seen anything in the past, or whatever, even recently? Has any officer? I mean, they have a dash cam all the time. Have you seen any credible video coming from like a police dash cam or anything like that, inadvertently being captured and sent into MUFON or any other UFO investigator?
From police cams specifically, I can't say that I have. I think there are some really good photographic cases out there, some video cases that I do find quite credible. There's the Trinidad Island photographs. I think those are really well authenticated. McMinnville.
How long ago was that? How long ago was Trinidad?
I believe that was quite some time ago, 60s. I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some. I like the earlier photographs, well before we had Photoshop, AI, artificial intelligence.
Me too, man. Yeah, because how in the world? You're right. There's technology's kind of ruined it, because you don't know what is real and what isn't. But the earlier ones are just shocking and amazing. I really love to see those. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, probably my favorite in terms of video would be the Kumburgaz Turkey footage. This is authenticated by the Turkish government. No one's been able to debunk it. It occurred over a period of 3 years, 2007, 2008, 2009. Quite literally hours of footage, very clearly showing the craft and actual figures inside humanoids. It's pretty easy to look up. It's really well known. I think that's one of my favorite footage in terms of actual video footage. There's also really good footage coming from Salina, Colorado. That's back in the mid-1990s. trustworthy. When the Pentagon comes out or the FBI starts giving us statements on this phenomena, people are rightfully skeptical. And that's their own fault. So I'm not sure how they're going to get out of this unless they start really putting out full truth and transparency and disclosure. And by that,
Chris, at this point, unless, a damn craft lands and they walk out, will people believe it? Because even I mean, there's some stuff that even I'm like, I don't even know if this is real or what. I mean, I've seen some really good stuff that's made to even look old that you don't even know that's, genuine or not. I mean, yeah, people really have to take this. Who's the guy that actually does his name is Mark something. I think they sent a lot of photographs and video for him to authenticate to try to see if there's been, some technology behind any of it. You know what I'm talking about?
I can't say for sure.
Never mind. We'll go somewhere else with it. But you're right, Preston. I don't know. Even Linda was like, she didn't know how. How in the world do you make people take this seriously?
One thing I think what they really need to do is commit to the truth of Roswell. Commit to the truth of the Malmstrom incident in 1960. Admit to the truth of the flyovers of the U.S. Capitol in 1952. Admit to the truth of a whole string of these incidents that we know they've lied about. Show us the Roswell craft. Show us the bodies. And then we'll talk.
Tell people about the flyover.
People often say, if UFOs are real, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Well, it very nearly happened in 1952. There was a huge wave of sightings that year, and UFOs overflew the United States Capitol. Were very likely to be caught on radar. This is extremely well authenticated. People who were there have gone on record testifying that they were there in the radar room watching these blips. There's books written about this entire incident. So this is a very well-known incident that our governments have refused to authenticate. They called it the result of temperature inversions. And we know that's not true. So many people saw this. This was a really big, what UFO researchers call a display. UFOs, while normally evasive to some degree, often will put on displays, show themselves intentionally. So I think that's one of their goals, is to basically announce their presence. They've been doing a very vigorous publicity campaign for decades, showing themselves over major city centers, showing themselves to small groups of people individually, sometimes large groups of people. They want us to know they're here. And that's what the Capitol sightings were, I think, a display. So that needs to be admitted to the truth of it until we can start admitting, truth and transparency with this subject historically, then we can move forward. Until they do that, I don't see how they can be considered credible.
No one trusts the government. I can tell you that there's no transparency, zero transparency. They tell us what they want us to hear and what they want us to know, and then they gaslight. They gaslight us when we have the congressional meetings and no one's able to really elaborate on anything because supposedly the security clearances and things like that. We're going to talk about it. But let me ask you something else about the flyover over on the Capitol there. Here that was to possibly have that technology at that time, and that was something that they were doing.
Yeah, I have heard that, and I don't find it credible at all. I think that's just a piece of disinformation and rumors floating around with. It's pure speculation. So I don't see how anyone can say that.
Is there a theory that you lean towards that you believe is true or about it? Who had them or where did technology come from?
I think we, our own government, do have some of this technology, certainly. But no, I don't think, I believe those were genuine ETs flying over the Capitol.
Really?
It fits the pattern we've seen with so many other UFO displays. There was a craft in 1991 that hovered over Mexico City for hours and was filmed at 20 or 30 different locations on videotapes. Now it's still real hard to find. Now it's kind of been buried, but this is another example of a display. They do this. I wrote a book on schoolyard encounters where I covered over more than 100 schools across the United States and the world. This is what I'm talking about here. They do want us to know that they're real, but they're doing it in a way where it won't cause complete chaos or panic. So it's a tricky sort of fine line there.
Good point. You're right. You're right. Let me ask you something about Mexico. It seems like the things that I've seen, and it's one of their foremost UFO researchers down there. His name escapes me right now. But for some reason, to me, it seems like Mexico has a ton of sightings, just incredible things, just in pure daylight, all day long, all the time. Do you have any theories as to why they show themselves to the population of, Mexico, and just without, any kind of worry or anything? I mean, why Mexico?
I think they're doing it everywhere. It's just that the Mexican government all the governments across the world are now being forced to admit to the reality of this phenomenon. So we're seeing great strides forward. France, England, Canada, all over the world, Japan, even China is taking the subject very seriously. But Mexico is kind of ahead of the curve there. We've had some very undeniable sightings, which means, like the one during the solar eclipse in 1991, July, they had to come forward, otherwise they would not be credible. But I do think that this is happening all over the world. It just doesn't get media coverage. There is a media blackout on this. This has been proven by numerous researchers. There was a gentleman, I forget his first name, his last name is Hansen. He wrote a book called The Missing Times. And very clearly laid it out in black and white how this cover-up is for real in terms of the media. And the cover-up is not speculation. It's easily demonstrable through documents released from the Freedom of Information Act. Seeing the vast majority of evidence. Most sightings never make it to the national news. Apparently it's the intelligence agencies, highest levels of the military, but it's a tricky name here because it's also the military-industrial complex. It's hard to say who's exactly behind it, but we've identified them pretty closely as the intelligence agencies, highest levels of the military, and what you might call the cabal or the secret government, which is partially in the private sector.
Well, I'm talking about are you talking, because I'm talking about the direction, or whoever's giving the media, telling them, listen, we want you to cover this way. I mean, who do you think controls that?
We're still, it's hard to say for sure. It's not really my expertise. I focus most of my research on people who are having direct cases of contact. But there's a lot going on here, so you have to follow all of this. It's all connected. And as near as I can tell, the network executives are controlled to some extent. Stuff does leak through. There's, every now and then a UFO incident of such magnitude that it does make the evening news. But the vast majority just never does. These stories are quashed, hidden. I've got several examples of this in my own research, people I've interviewed, who had really dramatic sightings with crowds of people seeing it, went to the newspaper, and the story was never published. And they say that military officials show up and basically say, no, you're not going to print this story. So this cover-up is brutal. They spent an enormous amount of time, money, and energy, our tax dollars, to make sure that no good evidence reaches the vast majority of the public.
You're right, Chris. I had actually several guests say that they believe that the media is under control, complete control of one or two or however many intelligence agencies. They're just gonna, they can't do what they want to do. In other words, there's no such thing as free press anymore. Let me ask you something about Mexico, because this is just popped in my mind. I personally believe the Mexican government has video that is just absolutely stunning. But I'm wondering, Preston, two things here. Do you know if the Mexican government is sharing any information with any organization inside the United States, whether it be the government or any kind of UFO organizations or anything like that?
I can't say that I know. But it's my understanding that the major governments all do cooperate with this subject, and that it's really beyond the level of the president even. And basically the highest levels of the military that are sharing all kinds of information and hardware as well. So that's my understanding. I can't prove it, but I believe that they are cooperating to some extent, yes.
Gotcha. And do you know of any landings, like have you seen or heard about any landings in Mexico or Brazil or anything like that?
Oh yeah, landings have occurred all over the world. Jacques Vallée put together a catalog of hundreds upon hundreds of landing cases.
What book? You remember what book that is? Well, because I'm definitely go by. Do you know what book that is?
She's written quite a few books. Anatomy? I'm not sure. Anatomy of a Phenomenon.
Don't worry about it. I'll find it. Okay, go ahead, Press. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you look into the history of UFO landings, you can pretty much find one in any single location. I recently put on a challenge. Name any town, any city, and I bet you I can find an encounter there. And I've gotten some 700 responses, and I'm going down the list, and I'm batting 100%. The point is, these encounters are far more common than people realize. Every location on this planet has been visited, and landings are not nearly as common, of course, as sightings, but they're far, far more common than people realize, because they don't get any publicity, generally speaking.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm going to add another one to the list, not spontaneously. Let me know if you find something.
All right, I'll put it down on my list.
Okay, so let me ask you this. All right, so this is what people are really, really worried about now. Okay, so now I don't know what happened or how this actually came up to me. I just decided to get on TikTok for some reason, and I started seeing things about the drone sightings because I don't know. I don't know where I was or what I was doing. I'm not paying attention to the news here lately, but it's happening in the New Jersey area. So, tell us what, if people have not heard about the sightings. First of all, tell us what's happening, what people are seeing on the East Coast of the United States.
Yeah, this started a month or two ago when people started reporting drones, what we believe are drones, mostly in New Jersey, but started to spread into other areas across the United States and even farther than that. And night, almost exclusively, sometimes in large numbers, but generally just smaller groups, and darting around and causing all kinds of confusion and fear, because we're not getting any official statements that we can trust from our city leaders, our government leaders. There's been a lot of back and forth, contradictory statements, speculation, wild speculation about what these might be. But yeah, it's been going on, and it's apparently still going on today.
And there is another, tell me if you've noticed this too, if you look and you research this a little bit further, Preston, you can look on TikTok, you see a lot of these. There's two different things going on that I see. There's the drone phenomenon, yes, but there's also the light orb phenomenon that's happening. These are just pure balls of light just flying around everywhere, very, very low, right over top of trees and houses and things like that. I've seen a video of some of these light orbs appearing in Miami. I saw another one in Nashville. A guy reported that it was appearing in the same place several nights in a row. And they're seeing them in New Jersey and everywhere, really, all over the world. Do you know have you seen a connection between light orbs and your research of UFO phenomena, either from MUFON or privately, as you do right now for people? Has that been a connection ever?
Certainly, yeah. People have been seeing orbs for a very long time, and I think in many cases it is connected to the UFO phenomena. I'm not convinced that what people are seeing is ET at this point. My assessment right now in terms of the drones and these light orbs is that we're dealing with covert military technology. I've had become a little bit of a drone expert and really study this. And we have drones within the military that can reach 12,000 miles per hour. Now we have big drones, we have little drones. Technically the FAA does not allow anyone to fly a drone over 100 miles per hour unless they have special authority. You're not supposed to fly a drone over 400 feet in the air. And what we're seeing, of course, is exceeding that. So I think probably what we're looking at are drones, and some of them are much smaller and very well lit, so they have the appearance of an orb. But for many reasons, I do not think that what we're dealing with here is ET. It has all the earmarks of military. And I think more and more explanations are coming out leaning towards that. It's a messy situation with a lot of disinformation coming out right now on this, all kinds of fake videos, clearly fake. So it's very difficult to sift out the truth. But I think what we need to look at is the timing of all of this. Because now we've had disclosure ramping up big time, these congressional hearings. And they started to really make some progress. And that's when this started happening, right before an election as well. Or, the turnover of our government to the next president. I find the timing of this quite suspicious. So there's a lot going on here to unpack. But my current assessment is that we're dealing with some sort of covert military exercise operation program. I think the information is still coming out fast. Now there's a lot of talk about possibility of nuclear materials being escaped, and we're trying to track that down. But I've heard every theory under the sun about this. Everything from hobbyists flying this around to AI taking control and flying these things around. But yeah, the more I look into this, the more it looks like this is covert military operations of some kind.
Let me ask you this, Preston. Do you believe like the orbs and the drones, the ones that look like you can tell they're drones, but the other ones, the little balls of light, do you also believe that that's some part of, a military operation?
Yes, I believe that that's what people are reporting. Now you have to remember, when someone sees an object in the sky with a light on it, it looks much larger often than it really is. It's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to determine its size and altitude unless you have some reference point. Unless it's very close, in front of a tree or a hill or a building or something, you really can't tell how big this is. There's, of course, party lanterns that people set off all the time during 4th of July and other celebrations. And there's lots of reports of this historically, and I've examined them in detail because I did a whole study of UFO sightings on the 4th of July, which turns out to be a major spike in sightings. And a lot of people are reporting these, what are obviously party lanterns, and saying, oh, they're 20, 30 feet in diameter. Oh, no, they're not. These are tiny little lights, but they look big. And you can shine a light bright enough to basically disguise or hide any hardware that's behind it. So that could be what we're dealing with. But we have to remember the technology that our military has is far more advanced than what we see in the public sector, in the public arena. We do have ET technology and have reverse engineered it to a certain degree. So it could very well be that this is what some people are seeing. Technology that we have not seen before, but is in military hands.
And Preston, let me ask you something. You said a covert military operation. So is there any that you've heard about during your research that you feel, has a purpose for the drones and the light orbs? I mean, what operation have you heard about that makes you feel like this probably is something covert and used by the military?
Well, I have to say, that there's been a lot of UFO activity throughout the decades, and it almost never gets the kind of media coverage we're seeing now. There's a frenzy on this, and you have to ask why. this getting onto the news when it never has before. So that, I think, is another, red flag here.
That's a damn good point, Preston. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
because I think our military has been flying around all kinds of secret craft for a very long time. And sometimes it does get labeled as genuine UFO encounters. And I learned very early on from people in the know, what you would call whistleblowers, that they said 20 to 30% of what people are calling UFOs
Gonna put gas at Love's. Putting gas. Let's go. I have gas in my car. Don't have to worry about doing it in the morning. had gas before I decided how to do it in the morning. So I'm here. Made it. Okay, dokie. This one.
I would point to the research of Michael Schratt, who's really kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and shown how our own military has gotten a hold of all kinds of technology. So we really need to, the Pentagon, if you look at the statements they've released on this, and the FBI and intelligence agencies, it's back and forth and sideways and up and down. It's contradictory. I think that what they're basically doing is intentionally confusing the issue to distract people from the whole disclosure process that's taking place right now. Or, and this is a possibility because there's been a lot of talk about this, a false flag, fake ET invasion scenario. Our governments have been putting forth a sort of ET threat narrative, which I don't think is warranted. I don't think it's true. ETs have been around forever. I think we've got a pretty good handle on why they're here and what happens when people are taken on board. And I don't think they're a threat to humanity, but I think they are a threat to the power elite, to their control over humanity, to their money, basically, to their greed and power and control over us. That's the ET threat to them, not to humanity. I think that's one of the reasons behind this whole drone wave, is to basically instill fear and confusion with this subject.
That's a good point, Preston. I mean, people have to think about, why are you taking it seriously, and why is this being covered so heavily in the media now? Why is this happening during the turnover of, the Biden administration to Trump administration? Why? For another thing I'd like to know, they're saying they don't know what it is. Here's what they're saying. They see it and they know that people are reporting the phenomena, but they have no idea what it is. But the only thing they know is that it's not a threat to us. I mean, it's just so insane. It's just insane. But I see like the level of frustration that's coming from people in the lowest levels of the government, local law enforcement, the mayors and things like that. They are feeling the same concern as the people that live in their community. They're getting the same kind of pushback and the same nonsensical answers that they're giving everybody else. They don't know what it is. They just know it's not a threat to us. Let me ask you this. Do you believe there's someone throughout, I don't know where the guy was, or I think it was a member of Congress maybe. He said something about, he believed that there was an Iranian ship off the coast of the United States, east coast of the United States, and this was something deployed by Iranian government or the Chinese government. What do you think about that?
I don't think we can rule it out. I think that, this technology is certainly not the sole province of the United States. Countries across the world have gotten a hold of this. But I suspect that if anything like that were to hover over one of our nuclear power stations or military bases, very quick action would be taken. I mean, this whole thing stinks of propaganda to me, because now they're talking about how they're shutting down some of these air bases as a threat. No, it's not a threat. Yes, it is. And there was a gentleman who was interviewing the Congress people as they're coming out of their offices and asking them about it. And all they can give is pure speculation. They're not in the loop. I'm not sure even the presidents are in the loop with all of this. So I think that might be one of the things going on here, that, it's really interesting that this is during the turnover of an election, because Trump is a little bit of a maverick. He's pushed back, I think, and perhaps this is one of the things that's making the secret government a little bit nervous, that more truths might come out. The black budget is getting a lot of scrutiny right now. We all know how the Pentagon spends $1,000 on a hammer or a washer or things like this. And that, I think, is also making the, quote, secret government nervous. There's a lot of stuff connected to all of this. So it should be really interesting to see how this all rolls out in the next couple of months, because I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of it. There's something going on, and we're only seeing what's right in front of us, and so much is going on behind the scenes that we don't know about.
I think this is the beginnings of something major. I don't know what's happening, but this is unbelievable, really, to watch it unfold. Let me ask you something about it just slipped my mind. Preston, I hate when that happens. Okay. I saw a great video of a guy who was, I think he was, I don't know, maybe outside of his house. He lives by Hartsfield Airport, I think is what that's called in Atlanta. And these light orbs just everywhere, just appearing everywhere. And then people are seeing them in Europe and, everywhere. Do you think that maybe it's possible that, people might very well start to see beings may start to appear before people's eyes? And how far do you think this is going to go, really?
Yeah, well, this is a great question, because, being really well connected to the contactee community, I'm not hearing that. There are not people being taken on board these, quote, drones. There's every indication that this is military, because I'm not getting stories of contact. And I am in contact with people who are very well connected to ET, who have made it very clear that, no, this is not them. We have to remember, our government does have, well beyond what we would call 5G technology. has the ability to create holograms. And we've seen this, that are extremely lifelike, look absolutely real. If you go online, you can see sort of videos of whales coming out of gymnasium floors and people reaching out of billboards and cars and crafts and all kinds of stuff. So this could be what some of the orbs that people are seeing. No, I don't think that this is ET. It just doesn't match what I've seen in other UFO waves. So I don't know. I don't think that I have not seen any uptick, I should say, in ET reports. In fact, there's been a complete opposite, a real drop of direct contact right now.
Tell me, how do you, this is a good question. With people getting like information from everywhere, no one really knows who to look to try and get the truth about what's really happening. Are there some sources that you pay attention to, that you trust, to give you the information just straight up as it is, and it's never, you never really have to, of course you still have to do your own research, but what are some sources that you would point people to actually get their information from, as opposed to like the mainstream media?
Yeah, everyone has to really do their own vetting here, their own research. I always try to stick to a facts-only kind of objective reporting, because there are quite a few researchers out there who I would put in quotes are not true researchers, but are probably disinformation agents, or out there just to make a buck. But there are some researchers I absolutely do respect. I like Michael Schratt, Linda Zimmerman, Timothy Good, Barbara Lamb. I mean, there's quite a few really good researchers out there. Frank Ficino, I think he's doing great research. But yeah, you have to be really careful and do your own vetting, do your own research. I focused again mostly on people who've had direct contact. I'd say my favorite contactee case is that of Dolly Safran. I wrote a whole book on just her experiences, because I vetted her case so thoroughly, and she's got photographic evidence, medical evidence, corroborating witnesses, references, an unimpeachable resume. And actually, I became a part of her case, a participant, in terms of seeing these craft and having my own experiences with them. So I would point people to that book that I wrote about her case, which is called Symmetry. But yeah, I've tried very hard to vet each person I interview. So if you'd like to know, what direct contact cases are like, I would point to my book Symmetry, or Onboard UFO Encounters, Inside UFOs, Extraterrestrial Visitations, Wondrous. I've written quite a bit about this. I have a YouTube channel as well for people who don't have the time or money to, buy books. Also on Audible, because I know people love Audible these days. That's getting more and more popular. But other researchers, there's just a handful of people out there that I really trust.
That's good advice there. You just can't believe what everybody's telling you. You really have to dig in and do your own research and be objective for whatever you're hearing from people, because you really you can't even trust your eyes. I hate to say that, Preston. You really just can't trust your eyes either, because the technology is just unreal. AI is accelerating at a pace that's scary, to be honest. Do you feel that way? Like AI is just getting out of control,
Yeah, what we really need to do, because this is our best tool, is to educate yourself. And beyond that, develop your own intuition, your psychic abilities. Because we do have incredible powers of perception. And telepathy is a real thing. This is how ETs communicate with people. And contactees in general are profoundly psychic. And there's a reason for that. So this is a tool that we can all embrace and use to sort of discern the truth. But yeah, it's a sticky, messy situation right now. You really, really have to be careful, because this cover-up is still firmly locked in place. We have not seen disclosure. What we're getting is 2 steps sideways and 1 step back, and all kinds of contradictory, and confusing and fear-based information. Don't buy into the fear. It's not true. I would look to the contactees if you want to get the true picture of what ET contact is all about. But even then, you have to be really careful, because some of these, quote, contactees out there are lying, flat out lying disinformation agents, or are so fear-based that they're not getting to the truth of even their own experiences, because we've been trained to fear from birth. You know, we're dealing with a really difficult situation here in terms of our own governments perhaps not having our best interests in mind. That's another thing we need to recognize. And you can look beyond the UFO field to prove this to yourself. It's a real difficult situation.
My last question, Preston, is if this phenomena keeps going at the pace and even accelerates, and people start to see this happening more and more often, do you believe this will force disclosure and that Trump will be the disclosure president?
I sure hope so. Having been in this field for decades, I'm kind of jaded, honestly. I'm not sure we'll ever get full disclosure. I think what we might see is Trump saying an official statement as president, which we've never had, that UFOs are real. And that would be huge. That's a big step forward. But to me, the end game of disclosure is seeing the craft, seeing the bodies, and having a full admission to the truth of the historical events that I mentioned earlier. Things like, gosh, there's so many of them. The Malmstrom flyover of the missile base in Montana, where they shut off our intercontinental missiles. Show us that.
What about them admitting that Eisenhower met with him?
I was just going to mention that, because that was, very well authenticated. Researchers who've looked into this come away convinced over and over again. It sounds fantastic, but I looked into it in depth, and I do think that happened. And it was filmed. Show us that. There was a UFO that landed at Edwards Air Force Base that our astronaut, Gordon Cooper, was there at the time and saw the film of it, turned it over to his superiors, and we've never seen it again. Show us that.
Yeah,
I think we could get some of that, but I don't know that the U.S. is going to be the disclosure country. I'm much more likely to believe that Mexico or Chile or Brazil or, I don't know, we'll see how this rolls out. I think all it really would take is one to sort of knock over this roll of dominoes and have disclosure, because I do think it's inevitable. You can't hide the sky. The truth is indestructible. You can distort it, you can hide it, you can ignore it, but you can never destroy it. So sooner or later, it's got to come out for one simple reason, because it's true. So we'll see. I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime, but I do expect some really unprecedented steps towards disclosure over the next year, for sure.
Very good, Preston. I really love having you on the show. Please tell my listeners where they can find out more information about you or anything else that you may be working on.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. I do have a website. Just punch my name in. It'll take you there. The YouTube channel as well. I'm all over social media. You can get my books on Amazon and other online retailers. I also do my own podcast with Dolly Safran, a contactee, each Monday evening. It's called The Light Gate. We're going to do a Q&A coming up, so we're going to probably talk about these drones as well, because there's a lot of interest in it. But yeah, again, thanks for having me on. This subject is so important. People deserve to know the truth. I think it has the potential to change the world for the better in so many ways.
All right, Preston Dennett, my special guest. You can get every one of his books. Please pick them up and add them to your collection from Amazon.com. Preston, many blessings to you, and I really, really appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
To find out more about our guest and all others, please visit our website at mysteriousradio.com. And I want to give special thanks to our co-creator and executive producer, Kim Kyle, who brought this show to you today. And working hard behind the scenes, our team of 4, I want to thank them as well. Follow us on social media and share the show with others that may like the subjects that we cover. I am your host, K-Town, and you're listening to Mysterious Radio.
comes to having an interest in the subject of UFOs, there are those who enjoy it casually, those who study it more deeply, and those who become active as investigator researchers. As for the latter type, some, such as Max B. Miller, start young. Miller was the president of the Junior Flying Saucer League at age 15 in 1952, and in 1953 was the editor of Saucers, a magazine he and his group, Flying Saucers International, put out until 1960. In 1953, Miller came up with the idea to organize a convention. FSI organized what was billed as the world's first flying saucer convention. It was held at the Hollywood Hotel from August 16th through 18th, 1953. It was moderated by FSI member Jerome King Criswell, whom some readers may know as the narrator for Ed Wood's masterpiece, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Another precocious ufologist, Hayden Hughes, started the International UFO Bureau in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, at the age of 13 in 1957. Hughes may not be as well known as Miller is to some readers, but he and his group were involved in some cases that should be. Hughes passed away in Oklahoma City on September 13, 2017. There's an article about him by David Ferris, headlined Remembering a Man Who Investigated the Unusual, that was posted October 10, 2019, on the Edmond Life and Leisure website. According to Ferris, Hayden Cooper Hughes was born in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, on December 29, 1943. His family moved to Oklahoma City, which is where he founded the International UFO Bureau in 1957. Hughes' organization attracted members throughout the U.S. and internationally, and included members of the scientific community. He gained friends among the police and the media, who kept him informed and referred witnesses to him. An early incident of note is when Hughes wrote a letter to Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev asking for information about Russian UFOs. Khrushchev wrote him back and told him of his country's interest in the subject. Soon after, young Hughes was visited by 2 FBI agents. Hughes got the opportunity to witness a UFO for himself in 1965. At around 9 p.m. on August 1st, local reporter Mike Buchanan called him to tell him that the Oklahoma Highway Patrol was responding to calls from over 20 people who had reported seeing a UFO. Hughes drove to the Highway Patrol Communications Tower and watched the sky while calls continued to come in. At around 11:30, a call came in that there was a UFO north of El Reno, 20 miles from the tower. It was then that Hughes saw his first and only UFO in the company of 6 patrolmen. As Hughes recalled, I saw a multicolored flashing light, and it hovered above the horizon to the west of Oklahoma City. While we were observing it, the Highway Patrol north of El Reno were also reporting on the same object in our direction, so we had a triangular fix. The object flew over Tulsa, and a 14-year-old boy got a picture that Hughes sent in to Project Blue Book. Their analysis was that the photo was authentic, and that the image was unexplained. Lauren Coleman wrote a remembrance of Hughes. Investigator Hayden Hughes died in 2017, that he posted May 18, 2018, on his website, CryptoZoo News. Hughes had an interest in Sasquatch and formed an offshoot of the International UFO Bureau called Sasquatch Investigations of Mid-America. In 1972, there was a rash of sightings of a Sasquatch-like creature along the River Road and at the foot of Marzoff Hill, Louisiana, Missouri. The creature became known as Momo, and according to Coleman, Hughes was there. Coleman describes him as saying he was impressed with the witness's sincerity. There was a lot of excitement in the media about the case, and Coleman quotes Hughes describing the scene. I did close to 75 television and newspaper interviews. They flew me to Chicago to do some television there. There were people around us shooting documentaries. Documents concerning a rather famous UFO sighting Hughes looked into are available at theblackvault.com. On page 15 of the PDF file, there is a letter on International UFO Bureau stationery dated September 14, 1973, from Hughes to then Governor of Georgia Jimmy Carter. Hughes wrote to say that his organization was interested in sightings recently reported in the area and that they had field investigators there looking into them. Hughes wrote that he'd had reports that Carter had observed the objects himself and asked if he'd be willing to supply details and fill out the enclosed sighting form. Carter responded quickly, and the returned form on page 4 of the PDF is dated September 18, 1973. According to the form, Carter, along with 10 members of the Leary, Georgia Lions Club, saw an object as bright as the moon in October of 1969 that moved towards him and then stopped. It moved partially away and then left. He described it as bluish at first, then reddish, luminous, not solid. Not long after this, according to Ferris, Hughes met with a man and a woman who called themselves Herf and Bonnie, who were also known as Bo and Peep. They had been speaking in the area around Dallas, Texas, and had stopped by his office in Oklahoma City on July 13, 1974. They claimed to be aliens whose mission on Earth was to show us that death could be overcome, and that they were, in Ferris's words, the two witnesses from Revelations 11 in the Bible who would lie dead for 2.5 days before being resurrected. According to Ferris, Hughes arranged another meeting, and along with Bureau member and Oklahoma City police officer Dan Garcia, interviewed the couple on tape for 90 minutes. Hughes seemed to have had some sort of belief in the couple's claims, as he reported that after he walked them out to the street, he turned around after taking 2 or 3 steps and saw the couple had seemed to have vanished. He also said that Herf had given him a thought code he could use whenever he wanted to talk to him. He said that it worked on 2 occasions. He used it and received a phone call from a member of the group that had gathered around the couple. Hughes, along with author Brad Steiger, met with the couple again, and in 1976 they co-authored a book about them titled UFO Missionaries Extraordinary. Pete, whose name was Bonnie Nettles, died of cancer on June 19, 1985, negating the claim that she would be resurrected. Herf, whose name was Marshall Applewhite, negated his claim on March 26, 1997, when he took part in a mass suicide with 38 of his Heaven's Gate group followers. Soon after, Hughes' and Steiger's book was re-released under the title Inside Heaven's Gate. Another case Hughes investigated was the alleged 1897 UFO crash in Aurora, Texas, in which the pilot was said to have died, that was described in the April 19, 1897 edition of the Dallas Morning News. According to the article, enough of the pilot's badly disfigured remains were picked up to show that he had not been an inhabitant of this world. The article ends with the news that a funeral for the pilot was scheduled for noon the next day. Coleman includes a March 24, 1973 UPI article describing Hughes' efforts. Hughes told the reporter that they had checked the graveyard using metal detectors and had spent 3 months gathering facts. Hughes and his group were convinced there was an alien pilot buried in the graveyard and had initiated proceedings to have the body exhumed. Permission was denied to Hughes' group and others who would seek it in the future. An article in the March 12, 1979 issue of Time magazine offers an explanation for the original report. According to then 86-year-old Etta Peggs, a reporter, S.E. Hayden, wrote it as a joke and to bring interest to Aurora. The railroad bypassed us and the town was dying. Hughes was one of many unsung investigators who have been responsible for bringing UFO cases into the public forum. While many may know the history, the people who helped write it are often forgotten. Charles Lear is the author of The Flying Saucer Investigators, available at Amazon.com.
To find out more about our guest and all others, please visit our website at mysteriousradio.com. And I want to give special thanks to our co-creator and executive producer, Kim Kyle, who brought this show to you today. And working hard behind the scenes, our team of 4, I want to thank them as well. Follow us on social media and share the show with others that may like the subjects that we cover. I am your host, K-Town, and you're listening to Mysterious Radio. Hi there, I'm K-Town, and on this edition of Mysterious Radio.
UFO Causes Car Crash by Charles Lear. There is an article headlined The Paradale Car Crash, the March-April 1969 Flying Saucer Review, Volume 15, Number 7. It is described as an adapted version of an article written by Henk Hemfelaar and Claude Elms of New Zealand Scientific Space Research that appeared in that organization's newsletter, Spaceview. It concerns a car accident in Taradale, New Zealand,
a suburb of the northeastern city of Napier, involving 2 young men who reported that a UFO was the cause. According to Infalar and Elms, not only did the young men report this to police, but the owner-driver of the car gave the same story to his insurance company, and it was used as a defense by him in a court of law. According to Infalar and Elms, the story first appeared in the September 15, 1968, Auckland Sunday News. They describe it as being slightly exaggerated, as the witnesses refused to talk to reporters, and the reporter who wrote the story did so using sources other than those involved in the car crash. The authors describe having heard of the incident on September 10th, when they received a letter from the young men, John Dow, 19, and Paul Franklin, 17. Dow and Franklin were told to get in touch with Elms, and he took charge. According to the authors, Dow and Franklin were driving around Taradale on Friday, September 6th, when they saw lights hovering over the city dump. They described them as dozens of reds, greens, and blues darting around. They then heard an explosion, and this was followed by rumblings and vibrations which shook the car. The lights are described as then grouping together and leaving at this point. Dow and Franklin are said to have gotten the idea that they might have been watching flying saucers and to have immediately gone to the constable on duty to report this. The constable is described as having been interested but non-committal and not to have commented. According to the authors, Dow and Franklin returned to the same area the next night and saw nothing. Then, on Sunday, September 9th, they reportedly saw an object that shot out a beacon of light. They went to the Taradale police station to report it. According to Infalar and Elms, the officer on duty explained their sighting away as a salt-impregnated cable flashing because of wind, but Dow and Franklin said there was no wind. Dow and Franklin are said on Monday night to have seen a glowing light that shot up into the sky. The reader is told they didn't report it as they were tired of being laughed at. And then, Tuesday night, as they were driving in the area of the previous night's sighting, they reportedly saw a lighted object in the sky that changed color from red to orange to blue and sent out a beacon of white light. They drove towards the light, and as they did, it went out of sight behind a cloud. According to the authors, Franklin and Dow turned back towards Taradale. Franklin reportedly saw the object again through the rear window. It picked up speed and headed towards them, glowing brilliantly white. Franklin alerted Dow, who turned and saw it, and Franklin yelled, "Bail out, it's got us." They both jumped out on the passenger side of the car, which was moving at 30 to 40 miles per hour, and suffered scrapes and bruises. The object was reportedly so bright at this point that Franklin, on his back, covered his eyes to avoid being blinded. It's described as having hovered 2 feet above them before it suddenly shot up into the sky. Franklin and Dow described it as a spheroid around 2.5 feet in diameter. They said that while it glowed brightly, it did not cast any light. According to Infalar and Elms, they had the impression of a translucent brilliance with the light pushing into the object. The driver of this car is described as crashing into the doorway of a fruit shop and destroying a plate glass window. The crowd is said to have gathered and to have found Franklin and Dow badly frightened and shocked, calling out about the saucer which had attacked them. The rest of the article was about the investigation and is broken into 7 sections, each subheaded according to the particular aspect being detailed. The first section is titled The Boys. The authors describe Franklin as being the spokesman for the two and as knowing something about the UFO subject. They say they asked him about this and that he told them he'd read Inside the Flying Saucers by George Adamski and had found it far-fetched. According to the authors, Dow and Franklin told them that they went to the hospital the next night, that the staff did not believe their story, and that they were kept waiting until, in the author's words, their clothes were sticking to them. The two are also said to have gone to the Napier police station seeking protection after a reporter told them what happens to flying saucer victims. Section 2 details the accident scene. It begins with the report by the tow truck driver said to have arrived half an hour after the accident and a quarter of an hour after the police, who said that Dow and Franklin were swearing and cursing about, in the author's words, the flying saucer that had attacked them. He said if it was all an act, it was a good one, and there was no evidence of drinking. He said the police seemed to accept Franklin and Dow's story. An investigation 4 days after the crash is said to have revealed no skid marks and that there was a new door jamb and plate glass window at the fruit store. In the section dealing with the car, it is identified as an Austin A55 Mark I 1957 model. Helms is said to have thoroughly examined it and to have found the damage to the right front fender and the front axle assembly consistent with a head-on collision at a speed of 30 to 40 miles per hour. The car is described as a write-off. Section 4 is titled The Police, and the officer in charge is described as willing to discuss the matter with somebody who knew something about the subject. However, according to the authors, there were orders that nobody else was to be given information because of a crank who apparently called the station. The police are said to have put out the explanation that Dow and Franklin had seen a fireball, even though the weather did not cater for such phenomena. The authors also mentioned that a certain wing commander in Wellington showed interest in the case, and that 4 Canberras were seen in the area 3 days after the accident, whereas normally Air Force planes were not seen there for months on end. They end the section saying that Napier Police Constable Barry Martin Buss said that when he got to the accident scene, he found Franklin and Dow's story sensible and logical. In the remaining sections, the key points are that the authors found that Dow's insurance company, with the aid of the police report, found no reason to doubt Dow's story, and that the reckless driving charge against Dow was dismissed by the magistrate's court at Napier. According to the authors, the magistrate conceded that Dow had been worked up into a state of mind that led him to his actions after being distracted by something, but the magistrate was far from accepting that he had been attacked by a flying saucer. He had this to say: most of these lights people see have a natural cause, and the flying saucer in hot pursuit might have been the lights of a car coming around the corner. Charles Lear is the author of Crashed Saucers and Malevolent Aliens, available at Amazon.com.
To find out more about our guest and all others, please visit our website at mysteriousradio.com. And I want to give special thanks to our co-creator and executive producer, Kim Kyle, who brought this show to you today. And working hard behind the scenes, our team of 4, I want to thank them as well. Follow us on social media and share the show with others that may like the subjects that we cover. I am your host, K-Town, and you're listening to Mysterious Radio. Hi there, I'm K-Town, and on this edition of Mysterious Radio.
UFO ejects metal over Iowa by Charles Lear. Tales of UFOs ejecting hot metal go back to the days when flying saucers were just becoming an American national obsession. In fact, the first flying saucer witness, Kenneth Arnold, encountered such a tale when he looked into the Maury Island incident for Fate magazine and became the first privately funded flying saucer investigator. In this week's blog, we'll take a look at an incident that was reported 30 years later in Council Bluffs, Iowa, according to an article by Jason Offit of the Eastern Jackson. Daily Examiner, published online on February